Good evening. So it seems as though something has led you to the campsite of the Orator. Well, as you can see, I've stoked the fire, which means it's time for you to pull up your chair and settle in, because tonight, I have another tale to tell. Deep in the woods of the Omer Plains of Michigan lies an ancient protector. And if you happen to find yourself out in those woods, there's a very real chance that you will come face to face with this entity. So if you're out in the Omer Plains at night, and you hear the beating of drums, if you see a creature with pale face and red eyes, my only advice to you is to turn and run, because you are standing face to face with the Witchy Wolf. But before we begin, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand, true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your play and chat to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and I do these longer videos Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, as I mentioned, all my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. Tonight's story is my own first-hand account of the supernatural and paranormal when I cover my encounter with the Witchy Wolves of the Omer Plains. And finally, before we begin, I have some exciting announcements. Number one, I have an entire new merchandise line that is rolling out right now. I had it drop at 8 p.m., so if you're watching this video, the merch is rolled out. I'm calling the new series Best Fiends Forever. It is an absolutely incredible line designed by those at Jack's Attic, and it of course features Bigfoot, a skeleton, and a ghost sitting by a cozy campfire, enjoying perhaps some hot cocoa, s'mores, and of course, a few scary stories. I'll make sure to drop that link below. Make sure to go check that out. And second, I am launching right now my new Patreon account. If you'd like to support the channel, there's the first tier of my Patreon account, the Ghost tier. If you sign up for the Ghost tier, $5 a month, your name will be shouted out every single video that you're a member at the end of every video. And second, you will have the opportunity to be a special guest here on my show. Now, if you're scared to be in front of the camera, that's totally okay. I want voices. Your voice could be featured here on the channel of The Orator. So make sure to check out my Patreon and check out all of those perks. And as always, thank you all so much for supporting the channel. I could not do this without you. I appreciate you so much. And now, with all of that out of the way, let's get on to tonight's story. It is a tale that I call The Witchy Wolves of the Omer Plains. So this story actually takes place in the late 90s, maybe even early 2000s. I was around 10 to maybe 12 years old, and of course, I was living with my parents. Now, me, my two brothers, my parents, we lived outside of the village of Sterling, Michigan. Now, Sterling, Michigan itself is an extremely small village, and it was even smaller back then when I was around 10 years old. I mean, when you went into this town, there was a grocery store, a couple bars, a place to get gas, and a tiny restaurant. You were in and out of Sterling within like 2 to 3 minutes. We lived outside of the village of Sterling. I mean, we were in the middle of the woods. You had to turn onto a dirt road and then onto a second dirt road before you could even reach my house. We were surrounded entirely by woods, very, very few neighbors anywhere near us. Any neighbors we did have were like a quarter to a half a mile away, so it wasn't like we were crowded at all. We had plenty of acreage, and all of that acreage was woods. The other thing that's interesting about where I grew up is that all of it is surrounded by oil wells. They do a ton of oil drilling in the area where my parents still live and where I grew up. And so all of that area is oil well trails leading back into the woods, and then these giant oil well tankers that sit back there. And so the area is perpetually smelling like gas and fumes and things like that, so much so that you sort of get used to it over time. And one day, I was playing with my brother. Now, my brother is about 2 years older than me, and we used to hang out together all the time because of our age proximity, but back then we didn't get along so well. It was very much a big brother, little brother dynamic where he would make fun of me and tease me and try to scare me all of the time, and we just didn't have a great relationship like we do now. And on this particular day, we were actually playing with our next door neighbor, Kenny. And we were over at Kenny's house. Now, to get to Kenny's house, you had to go maybe a quarter mile down the road, but then he lived really far back on this driveway, probably another quarter to a half mile back into the woods you had to take this driveway. And it was almost like a trail because there were other houses along the way as you drove back, and then you went all the way back to the end, and that's where their house was. And so to get from their house all the way back to our house by walk really took like 20 minutes to maybe even a half an hour if you were going slow enough. And so at the time, we're at his house playing, and it's getting later and later. It's a weekend, so it's not like we have to be home soon, but the entire trek back, we're in such a rural place that there are no street lamps or anything like that. When you're walking down the dirt road that I grew up on at night, it is pitch black. The only thing you have to see by is if there's a moon out or if the stars are bright enough. Like, it is truly, truly dark. And so we're playing at my neighbor Kenny's house, and at some point, it is getting late enough to where we kind of have to wrap it up and go home. And so the three of us decide we're going to make the trek together, and then Kenny's going to stay the night at our house. And so we make the journey. We head down his driveway onto the road, and then we start heading down the road to my parents' house. And when we get within seeing distance of the house, I can see the porch light on, I see the house illuminated, the driveway is maybe like 20 yards from us. There are these two well trails that go north and south that sort of go perpendicular to the road. The road goes east and west, and then you can turn and go down these. And the northern one, it actually heads back to some more land that my parents had owned back there. But if you take the southern trail, it actually goes all the way south to another road that's parallel to our road that's like maybe a half a mile south of us. So it's this really long trail that goes back into the woods, and it's even deeper into the woods. I mean, it is truly dark when you go back on those trails because the trees have not been cleared like they have for the road, so there's overgrowth in a lot of the trail area, and it is really, truly dark there. And so we get to that section, 20 yards from my driveway, both of these different oil well trails going in opposite directions. And it's like my brother and Kenny had maybe discussed what they were going to do, and they all of a sudden enacted their plan. And their plan was basically just to scare me as much as they could. And it's not that hard to do at the time. I was truly, truly terrified of the dark back then. When I was like 10 years old, I was so scared of the dark that I wouldn't take our garbage out. So our garbage, we lived in such a rural place, we didn't have a garbage can. We actually had a dumpster, like a true commercial-sized dumpster. And it sat on the back of our property, and once a month they would come out and empty it. But then, we had to take the trash all the way out there. So you had to leave the porch, go down, go around the driveway, and all the way to the back end. And it was dark over there. So when it was my turn to do the garbage, I would have to have somebody come with me, or I would refuse to do it. I would just toss it outside and do it the next morning. I would make up any excuse in the book not to go out and do it because I was literally that scared of the dark at that time in my life. And so my brother, knowing this and being a big brother who likes to mess with me, him and Kenny basically grab me by the arms, and they start dragging me south down that southern trail, the one that goes deep into the woods. And they're dragging me, and they're basically saying really creepy things. We're going to take you to our leader. We're going to sacrifice you. Just really weird, creepy stuff that kids say. And it should not have been scary, right? They were clearly just messing with me, but I was terrified. I was young and scared, and I was helpless. And so they're dragging me back on this trail, and I'm fighting with everything I have to break free. And at some point, either I do break free, or they took pity on me and let me go. But I do. I get away, and I start running back up the trail to the road. And then I get to the road, I turn, and I'm heading towards my parents' house. So remember, I'm like 20 yards away. I can see it. And so I start running in that direction, and then I trip and fall on the road. And I hit the dirt, and I roll to push myself back to my feet. And as I roll to get up, I see that somebody is standing right next to me, like right upon me. And, obviously all of this is happening fast, But it's like when I turned to see this person, this entity standing next to me, it's not like it was my brother running up on me. They were already there, standing still. So it's not like there was commotion. It was like this thing had been there already and I had somehow run around it, even though that's not what happened. This thing was clearly already planted here. And so I turn and I look up, and at first glance, what I seem to be looking at is my brother. It looks just like my brother. It's got his face, it's got his hair, it's got his attire even. It looks just like him. But there's something very clearly off about him. The first thing is the fact that he's just standing right next to me. Like I said, he didn't run up on me. He's staring down at me, and he's got this totally blank expression on his face. He's not trying to scare me. He didn't try to run up to catch me, to drag me back. He's just staring down at me. Totally blank-faced. Totally unlike him. And the second thing that's really weird is that all of the color is gone from his face. Now remember, it's so dark that it's hard to see anything around. But I could clearly see how pale he was. It was almost like an old vampire movie, like a Nosferatu level of pure whiteness. Like all of the blood, all of the color had been drained from him entirely. That's how white his skin looked. The other thing, even more disturbing than that, was that his eyes were literally glowing red. Like I could see the glow and the red in his eyes. It wasn't like the pupil or the iris or anything like that. The entirety of the eye was blood red and glowing. And so, of course, I took one look at whatever the heck this thing was that was looking like my brother, and I got up and I turned and I ran the rest of the way back to my parents' house. And I bust through the front door, and I mean, I was crying, and I was probably filthy. I'd fallen down on the dirt road. I'd skinned my knees. My hands were all covered in gravel and dirt, and I mean, tears were pouring down my face. And I bust in, and my mom's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And my dad's freaking out. And a couple seconds later, Josh and Kenny run in, and of course, at first, I am freaking out because of this entity that I saw. But the longer that my parents are asking, I'm explaining the entire story. And really, all that they're gleaning from the story is that Josh and Kenny, my brother and Kenny, they messed with me. They drugged me back there. And so they're not focusing on the fact that I saw this creature, the pale face, the red eyes, the weirdness of the whole situation. They're not focused on that. They think it's my hyper imagination, playing tricks on me because of my fear. And so they're more angry that my brother and Kenny have done this to me. And so that's kind of where their hyper focus was on that instead of the incident itself. And so everybody sort of just swept it under the rug, like it didn't happen or they didn't believe me. And honestly, who could blame them? I was young, I was scared. It is definitely something that seems like it could happen to a over hyper imagination. And so in my head, I knew what I saw. It wasn't a maybe I saw it. I was certain. But there was really nothing I could do to convince anybody. I didn't have proof or footage or anything like that. And so for me, I thought that the matter was kind of resolved. That is until a couple months later. Kenny had an elder brother named Gary, and he was a half-brother, and so he split custody between the two houses. So he wasn't at Kenny's house all the time, but he was there on occasion. He was a few years older, and so on occasion, Josh and Kenny would hang out with him. So one day, Josh is hanging out with Gary at our house, and again, it is late at night. They stay there quite a long time, and now they're going to go back to Kenny and Gary's house. And so they leave, they head out of my parents' driveway, and they start to go that way, and they get to the exact spot where I saw the entity with the pale face and the red eyes. And Gary, he turns, and he looks at like the corner where the road turns into this dirt trail. And he looks at it for a second, and my brother sees him looking over, and then he gets this terrified look on his face, and he starts running down the road as fast as he can. Not back towards my parents' house, even though it's right there. He runs all the way back to his house. And my brother, he's running, trying to keep up, and at some point he starts lagging behind because he's just confused. He doesn't have the adrenaline and the fear that Gary seems to have that's propelling him forward. And so Josh, my brother, he eventually makes it all the way back to their house, knocks on the door, goes in, Gary's inside, and he is terrified. He's in there, he's crouched on the couch, he is truly scared. And my brother, he's like, what happened? What's going on? And Gary proceeds to explain to him that they were walking down the road, and he turned and looked, and there were two people sitting on that little corner that turns onto the trail. Now, this is weird. This would be weird in the daytime. anybody who would be in that section, we would know them. You understand? We know every single person, really every person in the town. Like if anybody would be in that area, we would know who they were. That's how small of the place we grew up. But that would be during the day, and even that would be weird. Nobody would be there. But certainly, people would not be sitting there in the middle of the night. Like that is so bizarre. And so that is definitely weird. But then Gary goes on to explain that these two people, they were like looking down at the curb, and then in tandem, they look up at him, and their faces were exactly as I described. Pale, totally pallid face, blood red eyes. And he said he looked at it, saw it, and it was like a visceral fear took over. This animal instinct, and that was it. He's like, I didn't even think about it. I ran away for fear of my life. Now, what's interesting is, Gary never heard the story about the Witchy Wolves that I told. The story of running into these creatures with the pale face and the red eyes. He didn't even know about that. Like, when I told that story, everybody else just ignored that part because I was overly active with my imagination all the time. Like, I was always scared and seeing stuff. So nobody even paid that any attention. So he had no clue. And so now he's explaining the exact same thing in the exact same place, and suddenly it seemed more credible, what I said, what I went through. And so, they talk about it for a little bit more, and then that seems to be the end. But then, one day, Kenny is with Josh, and they're actually at Kenny's grandma's house, and they're hanging out, and they're talking about the series of incidents, because now Josh has something to add to this story. I saw it, now Gary saw it, and they're kind of talking amongst themselves. And Kenny's grandma is listening in on this story, and that's when she explains that it's the Witchy Wolves. She's like, oh, it sounds like what you encountered are the Witchy Wolves. So, of course, we wonder, what are the Witchy Wolves? Now, there's this ancient legend that the Witchy Wolves reside in the Ulmer Plains of Michigan. And the legend goes that back when Native Americans had settled that area, they had kind of like these guard dogs who they would keep by their side and be their protectors. And when the Native Americans, when their bodies were laid to rest, these guard dogs were so in tune with their masters that they would lay down next to their grave and they would just wait until they died. And then their spirit, the spirit of that dog, would basically rise up and protect the land. And there are a ton of stories of people out in the Ulmer Plains experiencing all sorts of strange stuff. The main thing that most people say they hear when they're out in the Ulmer Plains is war drums. They literally hear the beating of war drums in the middle of the night in the woods. Now, I never experienced the drums, so I can't say for certain, but that is what other people experience. They're experiencing fires and hearing voices and people marching through the woods, all sorts of interesting things like that. And so, she goes on to explain that they can take human form, and sometimes this is what they look like. And so, all of a sudden, it's like pieces of legend are meeting what actually happened to people, and it's sort of fitting in this sort of like puzzle. And so, one night, we decide we want to see if we can get some kind of proof, because it's now twice at the exact same spot. And so we're thinking, if nothing else, maybe there's something about that spot that has energy or something strange going on. And so we all, it was me, my brother Josh, and then it was this random assortment of cousins and friends. And I can't remember everybody who was there, but I do remember it was a very strange group. It was not a group of people that we would normally have as a group together. And I can't even remember the reason they were all at my parents' house, but we decided, hey, we told them the story. This is all the weirdness that happened. Let's go out and capture something and see what we can do. And so we get one of our old camcorders and we shove the tape in and we have a fresh tape and it's all ready to go. We've charged the battery. This is it. We want to catch something on tape. And so we all, as a group, leave the driveway. We start to head over to that area. Now remember, it's only like 20 yards. If it was light out, from my parents' porch, you could see the area. That's how close it is. But we start to head over there. We get out to the road, and we start to walk up to this place, and all of a sudden, the camera, it fuzzes out and then shuts down. And we had just charged the battery. We use this camcorder for everything all the time. It's never malfunctioned. It worked properly before that. No issues whatsoever. And right as we get to this spot, it shuts off on us. No explanation, no warning, just powers down. And so we're fiddling with it in this area, and now everybody's getting truly scared because it's like they've heard these stories, but a bunch of them, it's like they were not witness to it. So a bunch of them are wondering, are we just trying to scare them or something? And so, but this is starting to work. Like they're truly getting creeped out, and we're messing with it. And in front of everybody, we're showing them we cannot turn this on. It's not working. Something's wrong. And so part of it was we wanted to leave because we couldn't get video evidence. But the much larger part was that something is going on, and we're scared, and we want to get out of there. And so we turn and we leave and we start to head back to my parents' house. And as we're walking up the driveway, with no explanation, the camcorder just turns back on as if nothing went wrong. We didn't hit a button, we didn't turn it on. It just turned back on like it had never been off before. And so we discussed it amongst ourselves, and we decided it's probably better that whatever that corner, whatever energy is emitting from that corner is left alone. And that was the last time we messed with it. And so here we are all of these years later. I'll be 37 this year. My parents still live in that same house, same place. And I visit them often. And every single time I drive by that area, I can't help but look over and think about the night that I fell on the ground, turned and looked up, and was confronted by the Witchy Wolves. And so that's going to do it for today's story. If you found yourself enjoying this or any of the stories on my channel, first-hand true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your play and chat to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and I do these longer videos twice a week, Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Second, of course, all my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. Today's story is my own personal story. But if you or anybody you know has a story and you think that it would fit well on my channel, for now, reach out to me on any of my social media, and we'll find a time to get together, collect your story, and potentially one day feature it here on The Orator. And lastly, the website is rolling out. I am working on that, but if you could, check out the merch store, check out my Patreon, help contribute to the channel if you have a heart to do that. And as always, until next time, you may pull up your chair and settle in. My fire will be stoked, and I will have another tale to tell.